Surprise! A new Wall Street Journal report confirms what many observers had suspected and what appears to be part of a larger Biden administration agenda to push fossil fuel prices ever higher for Americans. Hi everyone, I'm Gardner Goldsmith for MRC-TV. Here's the story. Timothy Pucco and Anthony DeBarros write for the Wall Street Journal, quote, "The Biden administration has leased fewer acres for oil and gas drilling offshore and on federal land than any other administration in its early stages, dating back to the end of World War II, according to a Wall Street Journal analysis." And by early stages, the authors mean essentially the first year and a half. Continuing, quote, "President Biden's Interior Department leased 126,228 acres for drilling through August 20th, his first 19 months in office," the analysis found. No other president since Richard Nixon in 1969-1970 leased out fewer than 4.4 million acres at this stage in his first term. Which brings back bitter memories of Biden Press Secretary Jen Psaki poo-pooing the protestations of oil company representatives, gas station owners, desperate manufacturers, and U.S. consumers that the Bidenistas were smothering the ability of U.S.-based energy companies to tap into new productive stores of energy. And that doesn't even include the lock the feds have placed on oil refinery construction. A politically imposed problem that, as MRC-TV director Eric Scheiner noted in June, Chevron CEO Mike Wirth believes the D.C. politicians will not correct to allow for freedom. Of course, most of us surely have figured out the driver of the high gas, oil, diesel, coal, and natural gas price and supply problems. It's government via central bank-caused inflation of the money supply and federal clampdowns on exploration, importation, refining, and energy supply. Since day one of the Biden administration, when Joe nixed the Keystone XL pipeline, to his stoppage of new offshore oil and gas exploration leases, to his most recent move to unconstitutionally ban Russian energy imports, which, by the way, has not harmed Russia in the least, since Chinese-tied energy companies are buying the Russian LNG, liquid natural gas, at a ruble discount, then reselling it to those pro-Ukraine European nation states and giving both the Russians and Chinese hefty profits. Well, the Biden administration has engaged in a systematic carry-through of Biden's campaign promise to try to destroy the U.S. oil and gas industries.
No more subsidies for fossil fuel industry. No more drilling on federal lands. No more drilling, including offshore. No ability for the oil industry to continue to drill, period. Ends.
And all at the expense of not only the energy industries, but at the expense of our ability to better or sustain our standards of living. Americans for Prosperity started an ongoing list of these poisonous Biden administration policies in December of 2021, and they kept updating it through June of this year, with 25 ways Joe and his chums have used government aggression to stifle energy supply and raise prices. How odd. A government-created monopoly bank and federal claims of control over the energy industry appear to have made energy more expensive. Even as the DC hacks have engaged in this mafia-like intercession between us and those with whom we could and possibly would like to exchange for energy, even as inflation has teamed up with all of their dumb claims of Delphic, we know the energy of the future genius, the Bidenistas also have engaged in one of the most extended gaslighting campaigns since they blamed the so-called pandemic on the unvaccinated. Their gaslighting agents included former White House Press Secretary Jen Psaki, who in March absurdly claimed that the administration was not hobbling energy exploration, implying that it was the oil and gas companies' greed that saw them not moving to explore. A claim that was ripped to shreds by people who actually make their livings in the field. As Tyler Olson reported March 8th for Fox News, American Exploration and Production Council, AXPC CEO Ann Bradbury retorted to Psaki's insinuation by explaining.
The fact is that industry is producing at a higher level on existing leases on federal lands than in the last 20 years. And these leases take many years to explore, to develop, and to produce on.
Olson also spoke to Mike Somers, the head of the American Petroleum Institute.
This represents a fundamental misunderstanding as to how this process works. Once you lease land, there's a whole process that you have to go through. First, you have to actually discover whether actually there is oil and gas in that land. Second of all, you have to get a permit to actually develop that land.
And of course, the Bidenistas have fought since the start of his administration to not issue any more leases. Adds Olson, quote, Energy Workforce and Technology Council CEO Leslie Beyer similarly said some permits are viable and some are not, as a reason for why many are sitting unused. The federal leasing moratorium also isn't helpful in the current energy environment, she said.
The moratorium on leasing certainly just adds an additional block to American energy production. And so that is the opposite of what we need to be doing right now. We need energy infrastructure development. We need to stop the rhetoric that's anti-fossil fuel. And we need some clarity kind of in the regulatory sense that this administration is behind domestic production of energy.
Now, with the new data from the Wall Street Journal, Americans get to collect even more information and more perspective about who's trying to cater to their interests and offer competitive market prices, and who's intent on controlling them to remake the world into a centrally planned, government-run power grid dystopia. By the way, for added perspective, consider this. It wasn't until the Mineral Leasing Act of 1920 that the feds began to shake down oil companies, making them buy leases to explore and later permits to drill. But that process itself was clouded by already established oil bigwigs who utilized their political connections to exclude small startup competition. The key here is that the feds aren't supposed to control these lands in the first place. As I've noted for MRC-TV, the Constitution not only does not allow the feds to lease anything on federally run lands, it only allows the feds to own 3 types of land: the 10 square mile area reserved for the Capitol, land for military garrisons, and territories. When territories become states, they're supposed to enter with all of the constitutional privileges of states, which means they don't have to cede land to the feds. So, the big lesson here, something that we can take with us, is that government parks, so-called national heritage sites, nature reserves, all of those areas where they lease or don't lease, and control over the coasts, all of it is inarguably unconstitutional. The feds aren't supposed to control that. But of course, like the Bidenistas won't discuss the truth about their unhinged zeal to push Americans into a solar/wind government-controlled power prison, they, and most Republicans, by the way, won't face the falsehood of their underlying assumptions about what lands the feds can or cannot run. Yet, of course, most of us aren't the folks who swear oaths to the Constitution. We are the ones who are affected by the people who do swear the oaths, the ones in government. But they're the ones that have to be reminded over and over of what it actually says. It's amazing. I think it's also an indication that the U.S. system is pretty darn rotten. and I think it's running out of fuel. Hey, thanks so much for watching, everybody. Please remember, like and subscribe. If you're watching on YouTube, remember to make sure that you are subscribed. Sometimes people slip. I've been saying that the past few weeks. Also, Rumble. They don't censor us there. And when you go to Rumble, hit the little plus button. That's always very helpful. We'll see you on TikTok, on Instagram. We'll see you in Parler. We'll see you on Facebook. See you on Twitter. And of course, MRCTV.org. MRCTV.org. Please visit, say hi over there. And when you're there, go to the MRC Store. Help out the Media Research Center in its 35th year. You can find me on Gab at Gardner Goldsmith and on Twitter at Gard Goldsmith. Thanks so much. For MRC TV, I'm Gardner Goldsmith.